Welcome back, everybody. Unfortunately, we are at a place right now where the negotiations have stalled in passing the next stimulus package. And on this episode, I don't really want to blame anybody, but I want to highlight for you, is one side being more unreasonable than the other? Because there really is only two line items that are holding up the passage of the next stimulus bill, and only one of them is the major one. I'm going to show you some data, and then I want to have you answer a survey at the end and tell me who you believe is being most unreasonable in not passing the stimulus package. Welcome back, everybody. This is your stimulus update for Tuesday, August 11th. Before I get into the data and you decide who's being most unreasonable, I want to share with you again, the presidential debates are coming up between President Trump and Joe Biden in September, and I will be covering those debates very closely and giving you my analysis of what each of them is saying and some of the best clips that occur from the debates. If you're interested in that, consider subscribing to the channel. I guarantee you, you will not regret it. What I'm about to do on this episode is share with you the number one reason the stimulus package hasn't passed. And this is agreed upon by both sides. Steven Mnuchin and Mark Meadow agree with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer that the two major things that have stopped the stimulus bill from passing is the state and local aid and the unemployment boost. And out of those two things, the number one issue where they're farthest apart is the state and local aid number, which means that we need to look at what each side is offering right now and determine if one side is being more unreasonable than the other. I'm going to try to leave out as much of my bias as possible and just give you the numbers. So obviously at the end of this video, you're going to decide, is one side being unreasonable because they want to give states too much aid? Or is one side being unreasonable because, man, they just want to give too little aid? You're going to make the decision. I have a survey that I'm going to put in the description link and in the first comment that I would like you to fill out. 3 very simple questions, but please pay close attention to the data that I go through. And then I'm going to share the results of the survey with you in the next few days. So if you want to see the results from that and who people believe is actually at fault, again, consider subscribing to the channel. I think you'll be interested in those results. Finally, if you make it to the end of this video, I have 2 clips I want to share with you. One from Nancy Pelosi and one from Steven Mnuchin. In the light of the data that I give you, I think it will help you understand maybe where each side is coming from. So let's go ahead and get into this. It is the state and local government aid that is the biggest problem and the biggest barrier to passing the next stimulus package. So how much money have the states already gotten? A lot of people don't realize that the states have already received billions of dollars through the CARES Act, which was passed a few months ago. That was that $2.4 trillion bill. $150 billion was slated to go directly to the states, and it did. That money paid for about 5 to 10% of every state's entire annual budget, which is a fairly significant number. In addition, states got other money as well, like about $30 billion for schools and additional money for hospitals. So that's not the entirety of the money that states got. They actually got more money than this in the CARES Act. Looking at the total annual budget of every state in 2019 to 2020, it's $1.93 trillion. So that when you add all the states together and their entire annual budget, that is it. So in order to determine which side is being most unreasonable in the context of the current pandemic we're in, we need to look at the numbers that each side wants to give to the states and then decide, is that okay to stall another bill because you're not getting what you want? Well, what do the Democrats want to give to the states? So far, they've already given $150 billion through the CARES Act that both sides agreed with, both Republicans and Democrats. They also gave $30.7 billion through the CARES Act directly for schools. Again, both sides agreed with it. Now, in addition, they want to add another $1 trillion in direct aid to states on top of those 2 other line items. And some people will say, no, it's $915 billion. But with some number finagling and games that you can play with all these budgetary things, it actually is much closer to $1 trillion. They also want to give about $400 billion to schools additionally through the HEROES Act. This does not include other items that also give money to states. So the total aid that Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer want to give to states, that they say we need to do this and we are willing to stop the next stimulus package, is $1.58 trillion. They say that is completely necessary. In totality, the states must get that amount of money. And remember, the total budget of every state in the United States is $1.93 trillion, which means they want to give every state in the entire United States of America enough money to pay for 82% of the entirety of their annual budget. And the Democrats are saying because there's no agreement on this and because we're not budging on this number, we cannot pass another stimulus bill. This must happen in order for another stimulus bill to pass. Now, some people would look at this and say, yeah, this is very reasonable. We should do this. Some people might look at this and go, this is why you're not passing it. But what about the Republicans? Because we need to be fair and we cannot be biased. What are the Republicans willing to give? Well, $150 billion through the CARES Act. They obviously already voted on that with the Democrats and they agreed with them. So that goes with the Republicans as well. $30.7 billion they gave as aid for schools in the CARES Act. Once again, they agreed. Now, through the HEALS Act, they want to provide $250 billion. We have to remember, though, the HEALS Act actually had $0 for state and local government. That has now been negotiated up by the Democrats. Steven Mnuchin, through many statements, has hinted at it's around $250 billion. That is very close to the actual number. We can't know exactly, but it's very close. They also want to give $105 billion for schools. This is, in fact, an exact number. And there are some other items that would provide additional aid to states, but we're not including those. So with these numbers added up, the total aid that Republicans are willing to give the states through these packages is $535.7 billion. And remember, the total budget for every state in the U.S. is $1.93 trillion, which means Republicans are okay to provide every single state in the entirety of the U.S. minimally 28% of its entire annual budget through these packages. And the Republicans are saying this number is high enough. We are willing to stall the next stimulus package because Democrats don't realize that this number is good enough and they should realize it's good enough and come down to this number. So putting up this data for you guys, I have the survey. Do not click off the video yet because I have a couple of interviews I need to show you. I want to know, where do you fall? Do you think that the Democrats are being most unreasonable because they want to simply provide way too much money, even in the context of a pandemic? None of the states are hitting anything close to the amount of money that the Democrats want to provide for them. Even if they wanted to go into the future, it's just very unreasonable right now. And they're willing to not have any stimulus package at all because the Republicans won't agree to pay 82% of the annual budget of every single state in the U.S. That's not right. That's unreasonable. They need to get their act together. Or do you fall on the side where you say Republicans are being unreasonable because they're only willing to give 28% of the annual budget? They clearly need to give more money, especially in the context of the situation. Which side do you fall on? The survey is going to ask you 3 simple questions, and I'm going to give you the results of that survey in the next few days. So please, at the end of this video, as many of you that possibly can, take the 15 seconds to answer the 3 questions, and then subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, or like the video. If you like it right now, more people will take the survey, and it will get better results. So if you haven't clicked like already, just go ahead and do it so we get a lot of results. Now onto the videos. So in the latest information, there's been a couple of interviews that have come out from Steven Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi that I think highlight a little bit of where each of them is coming from. So let's go ahead and first look at Steven Mnuchin.
Down 50%, that make sure we had money going for distressed and minority areas. I'm highly confident we'd have an overwhelming number of people on both sides of the aisle pass that. So, you know, normally in a negotiation, what you do is you say, let's agree on the things we can agree on, and let's pass legislation so that the American people get the benefit of that, whether it's small business or schools or other things. Let's not hold up everything over a few things that we disagree on.
Geez, this sounds much more positive than the way I felt this weekend.
That was actually Jim Cramer interviewing Steven Mnuchin, I believe, just yesterday. And you can see there, even Steven Mnuchin's at the point where he's saying, we'll pass everything we agree on right now. We'll everything that we agree on. Obviously, there's some things we don't, but we'll do it right now and then continue negotiations. Obviously, that does put the Democrats at a disadvantage for the things that they do want to include going forward in negotiations. Nobody should be foolish enough to not admit that. But regardless regardless of that, he is willing, in fact, to actually just pass what they agree on right now, where Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, in fact, are not, because they realize it doesn't help our side out if we just pass it right now. So, and you can see where he stands on it. And maybe you agree with that, maybe you don't. Maybe you think it's slimy, maybe you don't. But so that's where he's standing at. Here's the one from Nancy Pelosi.
The other point Republicans are making is they are now showing flexibility in money for state and local governments. This is, again, a difference. Democrats want more money. Republicans.
Just to stop it for a second, the flexibility is that $250 billion that I showed, and that $105 billion, and the willingness now to actually just pass what they agree on and then figure out the rest later on. So that's what she's talking about. So maybe you think that doesn't mean flexibility. Some people think it does. Some people don't think it does. So this interviewer is trying to ask Nancy Pelosi, well, there seems to be some flexibility. What are your thoughts on it? Just look at her response.
Want a lot less. They are saying they're willing to show flexibility, and they're also saying a lot of the money that was passed in the spring, Madam Speaker, has not even been spent yet.
Well,
so
if you want to be an advocate for them, Judy, if you want to be an advocate for them, let's know what the facts are.
I'm playing devil's advocate here to ask you.
Now, you can see there the interviewer, Judy Woodruff, who normally is very sympathetic towards Democrats. She's pretty liberal in her ideas or ideology. And remember, I neither say that's bad or good. I mean, that's your opinion and where you stand. But everybody has their bias. I do, you do, we all do. But this individual, this interviewer, normally just throws up softballs, just like conservative interviewers do to conservatives. So it's not just one side that does it. And Nancy Pelosi wasn't expecting this sort of a question from her, this idea that the Republicans are being more flexible. In many ways, they kind of are with some of the numbers they're coming up to. And she's almost pointing to, well, it doesn't seem you're being flexible at all. You're not actually lowering the numbers on anything. Of course, Nancy Pelosi did say we'll come down $1 trillion, but she's not really coming down $1 trillion. She's just ending all of the programs earlier. So it's a little deceptive. When she asked this question, look at Nancy Pelosi's response to her. She sees Judy Woodruff as being an advocate for the other side because she's asking a very pointed, serious, and real question. So what I'm asking you guys right now is both sides will go back into negotiations. But this is the single biggest reason why there is no stimulus package right now, because Democrats want that amount of money and Republicans want that amount of money. And each side is willing to say, there's no way I could pass a bill with that amount of money. And the other side saying, there's no way we can pass a bill with the amount of money you want to put in it. So both sides are willing to not pass the bill based off of this. Which side do you think is being most unreasonable? Answer the survey. Remember, I have the presidential debates analysis coming up in a month and a half or so. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see that, guys. I'm going to keep you up to date and try to give you as much interesting and different information as I can on this. I know a lot of this is very repetition, and it's by no fault of anyone who covers this. It's hard to get new information out there, but we're going to try our best here. So if you guys enjoy that and appreciate that, again, consider coming along with us. Hit that like button so more people can see this. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. You have no idea how much this means to me and my family. I appreciate it so much. As always, I will see you guys next time.